Hey, hello. Thanks for coming. It's so fun to have this extra group of folks here tonight. For those who aren't in that extra group of folks, a group of our local residents took part in Hood River 101. It was the first time we'd done such a thing, and they spent time learning about lots of aspects of civic engagement and city structure and how it works. I had really fun time on the sidewalk at my house talking to several neighbors who are participating. So I wanted to thank everybody who took the time to do that. I think you guys now really are in a unique spot because you are now emissaries and ambassadors in a new way because you understand more than the average resident does. And so as issues come up and as people stop you on the sidewalk, you can say, well, when I was down at the sewage treatment plant, which not everyone has been. So thanks for taking the time. And it's a pleasure to have you here. We have a little bit of celebrating to do. So I'm going to come around here and call out some names. Jackie, is that right?
Quick presentation.
Great.
Okay. Well, so you already gave a very good presentation, but join me in welcoming and congratulating our Hood River 101 graduates. As you mentioned, this is the first time we have done a class like this before, so this was really exciting. And I'm really grateful to have had such a great cohort and as well as such great colleagues who were willing to put in the work to make a really fun and creative program. So I know some of you were able to come and introduce yourselves at some of the meetings, but not everyone was. So I just wanted to share some photos of, what the class was like with you all. Okay, so the Civics Academy 101. As we were discussing and planning this, we decided we had some goals and reasons for starting this program, which was primarily to inform the public, bring awareness to our operations, break down the barriers between the public and local government, as well as build relationships and have a chance to really engage in conversation with the community and foster future leaders, maybe city councilors, volunteers, committee members, people who now have a deeper understanding of the city and what we do. So we really strive to make these classes fun and interactive. As you can see here, some of the activities that we did at the fire department, some CBR examples, they got to ride up on the ladder. You can see some happy smiling faces there after they came down from the ladder. And the Public Works Department also broke down into different stations and really showed everyone what the materials they used, what it's like, what they're doing on a day-to-day basis. We also got to go on some facility tours, the wastewater treatment plant, as well as the fire department and Public Works as well. And we incorporated games to some of our more technical, less fun aspects. So we played a budgeting game. We also did some trivia and a chance for everyone participating in the program to talk to each other and get to know each other as well. As well as, we did have a lot of standardized presentations, lots of questions and answers, and more photos of the different ways we did them on site and had to get a little creative with some of the areas we used. And, as well, someone got to go for a little ride in the back of the ambulance.
Strong work, Brian.
Luckily, no serious injuries. And with that, if I could get you all to actually stand up and kind of stand behind the middle, because we're going to take some photos. There might be people I didn't want to chance to stand
So in the moment, you guys are going to come up and shake my hand and take your thinger.
We would like the graduates would like to present.
Right here.
The graduates would like to present Jackie and Abigail and everyone that we met. The city departments were fabulous. We want to name this some posted and we have a party.
Jackie, come on. That's so nice of you. Thanks so much. Okay. Jean-Michel Bach. Thank you. And what are we doing for Photoshop?
Yeah, if you want to stand me before the background.
And I guess stay here and we're gonna add to it. Does that sound good?
Yeah, that works, yeah, okay.
And Paula? And Virginia? Jesus Mendoza? Michael Sprague? Whitney Friedman? Kirsten Euler? Ellen McClure? Now I'm nervous. Is it Deanne Oran? And Jay?
Well,
Ali Kacholi? Brian Beebe? And Marcy? And Mary King? Okay. Now.
Can I get you all to come?
On this side.
Yeah. Sorry.
You gotta do the always the, what do we call it?
Next time we'll have music. I didn't quite think that.
We don't want to block this.
Oh.
no, you can't block the,
Okay.
We don't want to block the circle.
seal business.
3.
Right. The inaugural class. Great job.
I also wanted to congratulate Kristen Euler. Several times brought some of the youth that she works with here who attended several classes, and were great participants as well. And I was reminded that I let them know they could have a chance to say a few words if they wanted to, and I skipped over that. So if anyone wanted anything else to add.
Please do. We'd
Otherwise-
love to hear.
If you wanted to say anything. Yeah.
Well,
through this class, I really got a much better understanding how this wonderful city operates. And I really got an even greater appreciation for the people who run it. Thank you. Thank you very much.
And now, you're welcome to come and learn even more about as much about municipal government as you want to. The agenda was posted online and we're gonna work our way through it. So stay or leave. It's either way is fine. Thanks for participating. So in a more conventional way, we're gonna open the city council meeting. The first thing we're gonna do is turn off our cell phones. I'll give us a moment. Check out this logo.
your life is sweet.
Got the watermelon going on there.
Did you go to our conference? How did you get that?
I pulled it out of the mug in the break, out of the cupboard in the mug. Thank you.
What?
All right, now we have the linger problem. Hey, Chris, can you help us with the linger problem? Thank you.
You help us out, man. Get out of here.
Because we can't close the door. Reinforcements for the linger. No, we can't close the doors. We gotta leave one open. Will, yeah, good. Thank you. Okay, carrying on. Let's stand and do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Do we have any agenda additions or corrections, Abigail?
We have no additions or corrections.
Great. So the next item is business from the audience. We have Steve Wolf has come and to speak us. If you could come on up, please, and turn the light green by touching the rim and tell us what you'd like your city council to know. There you go. Good.
Okay, can you hear me?
You
Okay,
did it.
okay. Yeah, I had questions and a couple comments on the urban renewal plan.
Great.
I guess the first one would be a concern. I own a property at 1215 May Street, which looks like it is in the area that would have to be purchased to complete the rotary that I've seen diagrams of. My first concern is I've received no notification of any kind as a property owner that this was even a consideration. Normally there would be, if there's someone's applying for a variance or something, there's a radius search that goes on and affected property owners are notified. I guess my first question is, why has nobody been notified? And I did speak to my neighbor next door who owns the property, and they had not received any kind of notification either.
We will have staff follow up with you promptly, Steve. Not right now.
Okay. And then the question stemming from that concern is, if my property is to be purchased, and I'm not entirely certain that at this point that I'm opposed to my property being purchased at market value. What I am concerned with is this only came to my attention from a realtor friend who has been sending me information about the planning phase, I guess, which is what's still happening at this point.
Yes.
If this is public knowledge or becoming public knowledge, it renders my property unsaleable, essentially, effectively, because it's very unlikely that somebody would want to purchase the property knowing that sometime in the immediate to near or TBD future, they were going to have to sell it. I am assuming it would be the city that would be the purchasing agent.
I think we're definitely going to have staff follow up with you promptly.
Okay.
Because I mean, this is real estate transactions and complicated things and a $60 million plan and far in the future and
Far in the future, which might mean that I might not be able to sell my house for
Of
10
course.
years, 15 years.
of course.
which
Exactly.
I think you
Yeah.
can understand my concern.
Of course. Yeah. Thanks for highlighting this for us. Appreciate it.
Okay,
And we have the way now, swolf116 at Gmail. No,
swolf1161.
1161. Great. We will,
Yeah, my penmanship is.
you'll be hearing from us very soon.
Leaves little to be desired.
You'll be hearing from us very soon.
Okay,
Thank you, Steve, for coming down. I see some more young people in the audience. Would any of you like to speak to your city council today? It's okay if you don't. Great, thanks for coming. That's the end of business from the audience. Taking us to the consent agenda, I would entertain a motion.
Are we doing urban renewal first?
Oh, gosh, you're right. Thank you. I got, yeah. So we will now adjourn, not adjourn. We will recess city council at 6:20 to have our regular urban renewal meeting. Nice.
All right, we are opening the Urban Renewal Agency meeting for November 13th, 2023. We did a little executive session at 5:30, and now this is the real meeting. So let's see, I'm on the wrong agenda here. Business from the audience. I think the one we just took will consider part of the urban renewal business. And I don't see anything else, so on we go. Anything else on the agenda?
No additions or corrections.
Okay.
So we have the Heights streetscape plan is your first regular item.
Cool. There is a consent agenda for October 10th. I move we approve the consent agenda. We have a first from Grant, a second from Paul. Everyone in favor of approving consent? Tim, was that a thumbs up? Cool. Ben?
I as well.
Cool. And Heather on? No. Okay. So motion passed. Regular business items, and this is the biggie, is the final draft of the Heights streetscape. So take it away.
Thank you. And I'm gonna pass it over to Planning Director Dustin Nielsen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On with us tonight, we have Nathan Polanski from MIG. Nathan is going to take you through some of the final planning documents, really at a high level. Most of the materials included in the plan you've already seen. Really the document that you have before you, which went to the Urban Renewal Advisory Commission in on November 13th, I believe was the date. No, excuse me, October 19th. October 19th is now before you. So this plan has been out there in the public domain for a little while. But what it's really starting to represent is the final deliverable. So the package of materials that have been developed over the past 2 years are really starting to become placed and organized and materialized as the final plan. And tonight we want to take a quick overview with you of that plan, and then really focus a lot of attention on the implementation plan itself. So really starting to transition from the planning phase of the document into implementation. And you have some new materials that you may have seen before that Nathan's going to review with you. So Nathan, without throwing off the flow of your presentation, I know you have a slide deck and some materials to share.
Yeah.
Turn it over.
Awesome. Thanks, Dustin. It's great to be here again, and kind of our second last check-in with the board. So I'm going to flip it over to my shared screen. Okay, hopefully you're kind of seeing the kind of intro slide, Heights Streetscape Plan. We're going to be talking about the concept report and implementation plan, as Dustin mentioned. From an agenda standpoint, what we wanted to do is just flip through the final concept report just to kind of, as part of this conversation, provide an overview of the way the preferred concept plan is being presented, as well as the implementation plan, talk through kind of really quickly, kind of highlight some of the new content since we last met with you in August related to urban design elements, kind of streetscape environment. And then, as Dustin mentioned, the bulk of this will be focused on kind of an introduction to the implementation plan. And we'll talk about sort of the different projects and phasing strategy, considerations for coordinating with public utility replacements and sort of design considerations that we're tracking, project costs and funding strategies for the future. And then kind of lastly, some of the feedback from ODOT and sort of a potential upcoming jurisdictional transfer discussion. So just kind of looking back at the overall kind of project kind of schedule, we are wrapping up the third phase of this 3-phase project. As I mentioned, there's sort of one additional final presentation that's been planned and scoped for the final kind of deliverable that I think will include an opportunity for a resolution on that. And we'll be coordinating that with Dustin and Will in the kind of coming week. But jumping into the final concept report. So this is really the final packet written report that's going to document the study process that we've gone through for the last 2+ years. Really dive into the preferred concept plan and highlight, introduce kind of some of the key features and elements, as well as kind of those urban design, kind of streetscape components, and then a good chunk of it is the implementation plan. So I'm going to switch my material over to a different viewer, and hopefully now you're seeing a PDF screen that kind of shows. I'm going to scroll through the concept report as it's kind of in its draft final version. So we've got sort of table of contents built out. We'll be building out and including the appendices with that. But one of the things that we wanted to just show how this document's been kind of created. It's really graphically friendly, kind of focusing on the plan views and the kind of renderings to reflect that long-term future. We'll be populating the executive summary of this after we get feedback from the board and confirm the final direction. But this includes kind of a quick overview of the study process that we've gone through, kind of highlighting kind of key elements from each phase of the project, trying to document some of the key public outreach components, which has been a really big part of this process, the community engagement process. Similar to the April 2022 open house, we've sort of got this sort of project timeline graphic that shows key elements of the step all the way from sort of early on, kind of cities, kind of urban renewal area public input summary, issuing the RFP all the way through phase 1, 2, and phase 3 of this. The report documents the community's priority goals and the secondary goals, and these icons that show here are used throughout the document to highlight where different components and parts of the project support those community priority goals. In terms of the preferred concept plan, there's a brief introduction, and I think that the big piece, and this is what's very similar to what we looked at in August, is that overview of the entire project study area, rendered and kind of laid out with the future kind of intersection and cross-section configurations. And on this, we've highlighted some of the key elements of each of those. And as you can see, some of those community priority goals or icons are tied to some of the kind of new features of the Heights Streetscape Plan. The document is laid out to sort of walk through each corridor or kind of key intersection one at a time. And so there's an overview on 12th Street, which we've been calling the neighborhood street, and kind of introduce that plan view graphic, the typical cross section, and then highlight some of the design features and sort of show on a plan view where those occur with some precedent images. So again, very graphically friendly. Since we last met, we have been working to develop some perspective visualizations. And so here is a visualization of what 12th Street would look like looking south from Taylor Avenue towards Pine Street with that proposed street cross section and the two-way cycle track. And then we've got the plan view graphic that complements it next to it, and we've looked at that before. Same thing with 13th Street, sort of plan view overview, introduce the typical street cross section, and then highlight key design features of the 13th Street corridor, that through street, along with some images. And similarly, a perspective illustration has been developed. Here we're looking north towards A Street, and you start to see some of those intermittent medians that are happening in the roadway with our new two-way street, kind of the new continuous planting strip to act as a buffer for people walking along the east side, and some of the new traffic control devices to improve crossing 13th Street for people walking. And that kind of aligns with the plan view graphic that's next to it. So those are the two main corridors. We then go into the two key intersections. And so here we're looking at a bird's eye view of the May Street and 13th Street roundabout, looking south with the hospital in the foreground, looking up the hill into the heights. And again, similar, we've paired this with the plan view and some of the some kind of precedent images to kind of help identify key design features. And we do that for the key intersection at the south as well. And so here we're looking at Belmont 12th and 13th intersections, the reconfiguration that's happening there, the closing of Belmont between 12th and 13th, and you can start to see this opportunity for a future placemaking shared street opportunity for the community that also maintains access to businesses into the alley. And having hit, excuse me, the key kind of study streets and intersections, we kind of then walk through each of the east-west streets. So kind of May Street, kind of how that street cross section connects to the east from 13th over to 12th. Typical cross sections, some example images, and then looking at Taylor, A, and B streets as well. And then the last component that's documented as a part of this preferred concept plan is that future bike connection south to Pacific Avenue. And this is the one that kind of future coordination with ODOT to kind of narrow the lanes and narrow the roadway so that there is space to add that shared use path along the east side of 12th Street. So that's kind of the kind of overview of a lot of the geometric elements that we've been talking about for the last year and a half and have really kind of come into picture in the last 6 months. In addition to that, we've started to highlight some of the urban design elements, and so kind of documenting neighborhood character. These are images that were displayed at the public open house in April of 2022. They really characterized the feedback from the community, and from that really helped our teams and kind of working with city staff kind of identify that vision for the streetscape character that's building upon the existing neighborhood character to maintain the authenticity of the heights, creating a consistent and inviting places to connect and gather, and differentiating the heights from downtown. And so kind of that exercise and feedback from the community then informed the identification of 3 different families of site furnishings that could be potential options as a starting point as projects move into design. And so these show a variety of furnishings from benches, seating, bike racks, and garbage receptacles, and kind of they include both sort of a higher and a lower kind of maintenance version of those, meaning lower kind of more metal, higher might have some wood components. And so a variety of street furnishing options as a jumping off point. The urban design elements also includes some discussion about opportunities for green stormwater infrastructure and how the landscape along the street can help mitigate those paved surfaces and kind of protect the surrounding natural environment and recharge groundwater and provide the water quality treatment. The report also gets into kind of some preliminary thoughts for plant palettes for trees along the corridors and at key intersections, as well as kind of different selections for shrubs and ground covers. And there's a little key map to identify, where the different types of trees, whether it be a typical street tree, something that's more columnar, or a gateway type tree might be located based on the characteristics and context of the different parts of the study area. And lastly is some discussion on access management and driveways and identifying opportunities to potentially kind of relocate or kind of look for ways to reduce driveway conflicts across the two-way cycle tracks along 12th Street and May Street. So those are the ones in red. And then also along 13th Street, where there are existing driveways along 13th, that there may be opportunities to kind of relocate those driveways to either an east-west street when they have a second frontage, or to the alleys to help kind of maintain traffic flow and reduce conflicts. So that's kind of the very quick overview of the preferred concept plan. I'm going to switch back over to the presentation slides, and we're going to kind of walk through in more detail the implementation plan. So an important part of this chapter is how the city and urban renewal agency can implement this over time. And so what we've done is identified a series of 11 projects that we feel kind of provide or allow for incremental improvements that build towards that long-term community vision. These really have focused on balancing the complexity of the big key intersection projects that are high community priorities with some other kind of smaller scale, kind of earlier safety and access improvement opportunities to improve the heights today for walking in through the neighborhood and kind of improving intersections. And we've really tried to think about how can these build on each other over time without having to replace infrastructure. And so there's a variety of project types. We are currently coordinating kind of ongoing coordination with the city's public works department to document planned capital improvement projects and make sure that that information gets pulled in. And then for each of these projects, we have done a planning level project budgeting exercise to identify project costs and then also help identify potential funding sources. So what I'd like to do is kind of walk through the three project types and then go through each of their projects. And so the first project type are smaller pedestrian and bicycle improvement projects. These are smaller scale things that we feel can be executed quickly, while those larger, high priority community kind of large scale projects changing to two-way traffic key intersections are being developed. So these are things that we see can start early and happen concurrently with the bigger projects. And these are really focused on improving safety and neighborhood access, particularly moving east and west across the heights while building towards kind of overall goals. Second are the key circulation projects. So these are the large, more complex projects. They're going to improve the key intersections and convert to two-way traffic. These are high priority projects that will take a lot of resources, kind of funding and time to implement. And the third group of projects are what we're calling the fill in the blocks projects. And these are focused on building out the east-west streets and 12th Street to that kind of new final street cross section to get the wider sidewalks and allow the space and opportunity to build in that permanent two-way cycle track on 12th. And these we really see being phased over time based on kind of city, community, urban renewal priorities. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. So those are the three buckets of projects. And what we'll do now is walk through each of the individual projects within the plan. So we'll focus first on the key circulation projects. And so the first one is the May Street roundabout. And so this is really looking to build out that roundabout at the intersection of 13th and May. This is something that we feel can be implemented without converting initially to two-way traffic. And so designing it initially to maintain the one-way traffic and allowing some minor adjustments to come back and happen later if it's determined that, you know, one intersection at a time was an approach in terms of implementation. Highly complex, high community priority, and kind of a big cost number to kind of get to design and implementation of this project. The second key circulation project are the south end intersections. So looking at the intersections of Belmont and 12th Street, Belmont and 13th, and then a new kind of newly reconfigured intersection of 12th and 13th and teeing those up. And then with those intersections, converting to the two-way traffic. That conversion to two-way traffic would include medians and restriping along 13th from Belmont to May Street, and then potentially some kind of roundabout modifications depending on the sequencing of the key intersection projects to tie that into potentially a previously constructed roundabout. This would also include, once two-way traffic has been established on 13th, there's an opportunity and space to allow for that cycle track on 12th Street. And so this project would include an interim cycle track on 12th. And I say the word interim because it would include, potentially kind of less long-term built infrastructure, more kind of striping and kind of plastic posts to sort of provide that space until the future build out of that cross section on 12th is provided. Again, another kind of complex, high community priority, kind of high cost to implement project. The third key circulation project is the 12th Street bike connection to Pacific Avenue. And so this is providing the shared use path that would extend south from Belmont or Union Street to Pacific Avenue, kind of really coordinating with ODOT to restripe and narrow the existing 5-lane roadway, widening that kind of existing sidewalk environment with a retaining wall, preserving the existing native vegetation that we know the community spent a lot of time planting and kind of caring for over the years. And so this provides that safe connection from the areas to the south into kind of our study area. And the last key circulation project is kind of safe route to school street improvements along May Street. And so this would be extending this cross section from the May Street roundabout east through the kind of offset intersections at 12th. A new traffic signal at May Street would allow the two-way cycle track, even at an interim level, to extend to May Street and allow sort of safe bicycle movements. And again, another high priority community project. So those are the 4 key circulation projects. I'm gonna now walk through the kind of smaller pedestrian and bicycle projects. And so these are projects that we see, they can start concurrently and kind of at the same time as the key circulation projects, but have a much shorter timeline given the smaller scale, scope, and complexity. And so the focus is really where are there opportunities to provide kind of early wins for the community to make the heights safer for walking and biking. And so this first one are key east-west crossings on 13th Street, going all the way back to our phase 1 work with the community and identifying existing issues and opportunities. Taylor Avenue and A Street have always been identified as those key east-west connections. So this project reconstructs those intersections, provides curb extensions on the west side of the street that will be there for the long term, that don't have to get reworked with future projects. Provides some additional traffic improvements for kind of RFBs to get people safely across the street. And this would happen both at Taylor and at A Street. The second one is kind of reconstructing Taylor Avenue and recognizing the importance of that Pine to Taylor east-west connections sort of all the way across the heights. And so this is really focused on improving neighborhood access and safety, not just across 13th, but across the heights. This would include kind of new sidewalk and cycle track on the north side of Taylor Avenue, new sidewalk on the south side, and then looking for interim improvements that can happen on 13th, potentially similar to I want to say it was the 2019 city demonstration project that the community put on. And so are there ways to sort of narrow down through removing on-street parking for a short period of time or a short length of space so that you can build in temporarily this interim cycle track and make that east-west connection? And again, this is a high community priority project based on what we've heard. And the last kind of pedestrian bicycle project is focusing on creating a comfortable walking environment to prepare for two-way traffic along 13th. So this is really about looking at the 4 blocks of sidewalk between Taylor and Belmont and replacing that existing 10-foot sidewalk with a 3.5-foot planting strip and a 6-foot sidewalk in the same footprint. So there's no impact to existing parking, but what we want to do is create a safe, comfortable sidewalk environment so that when the two-way traffic hits, that this is a comfortable place for people to walk on the east side of 13th. This could include, and probably should include, looking for opportunities to remove some of those driveways for access management. As I mentioned, there is a page in the final concept report that kind of documents some of the goals and reasoning for removing driveways where possible. The third and kind of final group of the projects are the fill in the block projects. And so this includes building out 12th Street from Union to Taylor Avenue. So this is kind of phased reconstruction of 4 blocks, and you've got sort of 6 separate intersections because of the staggered intersections that are happening along 12 streets. This is kind of taking the existing 10-foot sidewalks, widening them to 12 and a half, providing the streetscape improvements in the final cycle track. And we really see this as this series of blocks and intersections as sort of the city, the community, the urban rural agency really determining the sequencing and the needs based on how those could be implemented over time, but prioritize these southern blocks to connect to the Pine to Taylor connection over the northern 2 blocks. So the second part here is that kind of northern 2 blocks, the Pine Street to May Street. Again, it's the same thing that we just talked about, but really felt like there was a difference in hierarchy between Belmont and Taylor versus Taylor to May Street. The third project is the Belmont Shared Street. And so this is reconstructing the Belmont Avenue public right-of-way as a shared street and community space for future events, full right-of-way reconstruction. And this has to happen after the key intersection improvements happen down here at the south end. So after those intersection improvements have happened, Belmont is no longer needed for vehicular traffic. And so this can happen as a separate project. It could happen as part of the larger project, but given the sort of overall scale and kind of scope, complexity of the south intersection, the 2-way conversion, we thought it made sense to potentially pull this off as a separate project. And the remaining project is the completion and build out of the other east-west streets, A, B, and C streets. And so kind of, again, phased reconstruction of these remaining streets, looking at building out the sidewalks, providing those streetscape improvements and intersection improvements where they haven't been completed. And again, similar to 12th Street, this is really can be dictated by community priorities and potentially redevelopment. As redevelopment occurs, there could be opportunities to kind of combine those. One of the other big things I've mentioned a little bit are the utility considerations, and kind of going back to the initial urban renewal plan that had identified specific utility needs. We've been coordinating with the city's public works department to identify and understand what the planned capital improvement projects are on the current CIP. And so the information and where those projects overlap is being mapped and will be incorporated into project profile pages. So each of the 11 projects that I just walked through are going to have a separate project profile page or pages. These will include the little kind of overview snapshot from our implementation plan graphic. There'll be more discussion to help clearly identify what the scope of each project is, some of the design considerations, and so trying to track the information that we've kind of gleaned or have learned through this process to inform future projects. This is also where we'll be including feedback from ODOT, and so some of the design deviations that they've identified as being needed if there was not a jurisdictional transfer. And then the last piece is the utility coordination. So in here, we'll identify the CIP project and the description of the utility projects that overlap with the footprint of each of these projects. For each of these projects, we've developed a project level cost to inform budgeting. So these are based on the preferred concept plan. We've developed these very similar to how we would an engineer's estimate at a kind of during a design phase. We've kind of looked at applying standard unit prices and allowances for anticipated project elements in 2023 dollars. we have been coordinating with Public Works to look at recently bid capital projects in the city to make sure the costs we're carrying are aligned with the kind of current market. These costs do include soft costs. So where we looked at project numbers before, they were kind of focused on construction costs. So now we're looking at total project budget numbers. And so this includes time for engineering design, city management, permitting. It also includes design and construction contingencies. So the design contingencies are the things that will, change. And you want to carry a contingency from kind of 30% design to final design, and construction contingencies allow budget for things that change during construction and potentially construction management administration. The costs do not include property acquisition. They don't include the replacement of those public utility mains that are planned to be replaced by the city. They also don't include undergrounding of overhead utilities. Those are costs that should really come from the utility providers, and the city will need to identify sort of more specifically the extent and scope of future undergrounding. And then escalation is also not included, and that will can come into play as a timeline is identified. And so that's kind of a quick overview. We will include a detailed cost breakdown in the appendix of the final report. Along with that, we've identified a variety of local, state, and federal funding sources and some additional ones to identify projects, funding sources that would be applicable. And we've tried to align those with each of the 11 projects to sort of help as each project comes online and the city begins to plan for that implementation, start to track the different funding opportunities and funding sources for projects. And the last piece of the kind of presentation is, since we last met, the ODOT has provided formal written comment to the city on the preferred concept plan. And so this included kind of a formal review and technical comments from their perspective. They document, identify some of the design deviations from the highway design manual that would need to be obtained to implement this if it were to remain within ODOT's jurisdiction. The content from this we have built into the project profile pages, and so that information can be tracked. And we also plan to include that letter as part of the appendix. A big part of this letter from ODOT really gets to the kind of discussion on jurisdictional transfer. ODOT has gone on record saying they support moving forward with the transfer process and that they recommend starting a jurisdictional transfer process prior to design and engineering if the city is interested. And from our understanding of other jurisdictional transfer processes, these can take a lot of time. I know the city has some experience kind of downtown. I think that was on the shorter end of the time frame, but I think one of the early steps for the coordination with ODOT and the city will be sort of understanding the assessment of the existing infrastructure and what the city would be taking over were they to want to pursue a jurisdictional transfer. So that kind of brings us to the end of the kind of presentation here. And I guess one of the big questions that we have are, is the prioritization of projects that have been identified, sort of the right order or sort of the thought process behind those. And so with that, I'll stop sharing my screen and open up to questions and discussion.
Thanks a lot, Nathan. Just real quick, this has been a fantastic and long and detailed process. So I guess my question to you is, it's like, okay, we asked you to design a car and now you've given us this. Any last advice before we just take off and cruise around town on it in the car? Because it's up to us, right? That's the big thing. Yeah, I think the first initial discussion is really going to start with ODOT and kind of understanding that jurisdictional transfer, if that's a path that the city and ODOT want to take. It does feel, based on the letter that they've provided in the comments, they see some challenges under kind of highway design manual standards that are different and less flexible than what I would call kind of AASHTO, kind of general kind of design standards that could be applied under local jurisdiction. So I think that's the first piece.
And the other one is there's a lot of budget and scope built into these projects. And so kind of thinking through kind of funding process and kind of that approach is going to take a lot of work, and it's not going to be simple, but I think there's a lot of tools there to help. So,
Yep, cool. Well, let's go around the horn. Doug, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I guess this is sort of an open-ended question. I mean, going back to the last slide there about prioritization of the different projects, et cetera. I think, the way that I'm seeing this, it's difficult for me to wrap my head around like how we could do this, and this and swap things, right? So I appreciate that sort of bucketing of what the different projects look like, but in terms of how this proceeds, how fluid is that? Can the order change? How often does the order change, et cetera? That's what I'm trying to sort of understand for how we can prioritize. If I wanted to say, oh, I like this one more than this, there's probably a reason for prioritization for a technical application to that, right? Like you can't do A without doing B and C first.
Yeah, I think
that kind of thing.
there's some flexibility, but it's not unlimited flexibility.
Right.
I mean, there are certain things that, if you look in your list, we're gonna take opportunities that become available to do work. If we have a large development that's going to wipe out a section of street or that triggers traffic improvements, we're gonna try to pursue that. But that has its limits when it comes to, changing the direction of traffic and large scale system changes. We don't want to do smaller projects that end up becoming waste. So, there is some opportunity to move things around there. Again, as opportunities present themselves, but at some point some of these projects have to work together. So,
right.
There's also impacts from ODOT. Some of these projects we can hope that they'll be willing to work with us prior to maybe the full discussion of a jurisdictional transfer. Some of these projects are completely off their will list. Or
Yeah, thank you. That was gonna be my next
tolerance.
question, actually, about,
So-
is the low hanging fruit, right? This essentially with prior to ODOT. Okay. Perfect. Thank you. I will probably have more to say, but that's good to open.
Thank you. One's just a clarifying question. The third project on the first fast things to do list. This is just different from when I'd met with Dustin earlier and what Nathan said. Will the parking on the east side be removed at that time or no?
No,
Right.
that project is specifically focused on getting the existing sidewalk zone set up to be a more comfortable sidewalk zone with two-way traffic in the future. So no change to parking.
Okay.
Yeah, we clarified that with Nathan, that the scope didn't impact the lane width. It was completely restricted inside the curb within the right of way. So,
well then great, you've resolved that question. And so then I guess in the scheme of, big picture prioritization and or timeline, one, I think the total cost in 2023 dollars, realizing we just approved a massive urban renewal district that's really only 20 million more than this, but is exponentially bigger and longer, does feel daunting. And so I think there's even okay, there's the first three, let's do something quick, let's achieve these goals, potentially uses up most of the money we have in the urban renewal district at all. And so I do want to make sure that's going to be critical money, I think, long term for match. It's the thing of we shouldn't expend that whole bucket I want there to be quick wins. I don't want to just say, okay, burn through all that and then we'll figure out the next 50 million someday. So I'm gonna flag that, but I don't have a great answer to how you find another 50 million.
So just to be clear, would some of the concern be, a lot of the grants and opportunities have matching funds? Maybe the balancing the tension of spending these money on small improvements versus using them as a match fund to maybe a larger project. So call it 80-20, federal money, typically 80% feds, 20 ours. This.
That feels very optimistic from the feds. I'm used to it mostly being 50-50 or maybe 75 fed, 25 local. So I think whether it's the urban renewal bucket or other things, knowing where and how we're going to get match is going to be critical to achieve this.
This is very exciting. To the extent we're going to be able to do stuff, this is the kind of stuff we're going to try to do. And I'm going to try to just be patient given the fiscal realities.
Thank you. Nathan, thank you so much. I feel like I say this every time, but it's all coming to fruition, and seeing graphics of like, oh my gosh, that's some of the local businesses here in town. It's just all coming to reality. In about conversations with ODOT and just jurisdictional transfer, something I discussed with staff today is I still don't truly understand what ODOT does for the roads, or, for 12th and 13th. And if we were to have transfer, what does that mean for us? Like in regards to costs, the maintenance, do we have the capacity as far as like, if we're going to be plowing the roads more, do we have internal capacity to be able to do that? And what does that look like 2, 3, 5+ years down the road? I know that during the transfer for Oak Street, we did say, hey, ODOT, help us with ADA ramps. And then after that, it's all on us to figure out Oak Street. So similar concepts, would something like that happen with 12th and 13th? So I would love to really understand that piece first before we continue to move forwards. I do appreciate the staggered phasing, but similar to Councilor Saunders, do we save those $7 million+ and then do we spend that on a roundabout as opposed to these first 3? So I would love to understand that as well. Like it's a hefty price tag. Thank you.
Having gone through a similar process with another larger piece of infrastructure, bridge is about $500 million. The federal match rate maximum is 80-20. So we can get up to 80% of a project can be federally funded. That's the ceiling. A lot of projects are requested at less with a local match as well. So whatever percentage we go in at, we can figure that out. It would be excellent to use as much local funds as possible to acquire grants and use those funds as matching grants. It's a great way to leverage our funds and ability to pay for these improvements. I have absolutely no qualms with the timeline, the order of things, the stuff that we get done in the order that we can get them done. I understand jurisdictional transfer will take a little bit of time to get done as well. But I am in favor of doing all of those things. And thanks for literally painting a picture of the streets.
Yeah, that was sort of cool. I liked it too.
Yeah, and bring our feedback and everything. Thanks, Nathan.
Tim.
Thanks, Mark. First of all, congratulations on getting this far. It looks fantastic. I agree that improving the safety, the east-west safety in the Heights is a priority. So I'm all supportive of that. Taking care of those first projects first. However, I think as everybody's indicating, it's probably pretty important to start thinking about how we're going to fund the bigger projects sooner than later, and including as the first projects get implemented. So, it's never too soon to start. So I think the sooner we start, the better idea we'll have about what we're going to need to do. So, but safety is really a priority here in the Heights. Thank you.
Cool. Ben, anything to add?
Am I allowed to ask Nathan a question?
Only if it's in French. No, of
I
course.
don't know. I can't remember that much. Why was escalation not included in the research for tonight?
because there's not a timeline that we're escalating things to. So that's one, is not having a timeline and sort of a future target to escalate things. I think the other unique thing about today's market is escalation has been wildly different over the last 2 or 3 years compared to sort of historical averages. And so I think what we are seeing is sort of some sort of coming back to reality in escalation, sort of coming out of, I guess, pandemic. But yeah, I think the biggest thing is, not having a timeline to escalate to.
And I understand that, and I'm the representative on this board from the Port of Hood River, and we're currently trying to construct a new bridge. So escalation has been obviously part of what we're doing, because it is a year from now, 5 years from now. And I just want to make sure that we're not thinking today's dollars are going to be tomorrow's dollars on any project like this. And planning for what could be seems important, because I'm just experiencing it with the port. I want to make sure that the city council has, that information as well, as much as is possible.
Yep, agreed. What else?
That's it from me. Thank you.
Sweet. Okay, so you can do it.
I keep forgetting who hasn't talked. Honestly, this is more a comment based on the public comment we got of the beautiful drawings everyone complimented, and I do love. I don't know if there's a way to make it more clear that those are conceptual. We haven't reached, actual design or impact to individual properties, just to somewhat address obviously, if you can identify your property in that map or on that drawing, it can feel very final. So more just a comment for Dustin and Nathan.
Great. Just a couple quick things in my one-on-one with Will and Dustin and Abigail. We talked about that there's these foundational pieces, which is, wrestling the jurisdictional transfer together, getting the updates to the TSP together, and to really start, putting together the beginnings of a funding plan, like, what grants are available, what do we really want to apply resources to. So I think that those are obviously, to me, the first things we want to be doing. I do want to challenge us to recognize that if it's 10 years from now and we're still wondering how to put in the new traffic flow, that's 3 councils from now, and they're going to say, well, we should restudy this. So I want to challenge us to keep our eye on the ball, to set the traffic change as soon as possible. So it doesn't say don't do these foundational pieces. It says, as soon as we can figure out how to put that circle in, put it in, use Jersey barriers, and I'll donate the paint to set the traffic flow so that it is the future then. Because if we don't set it, it's not the future. So that's my worry. How to do that? I think that we focus on these foundational pieces. There will be decision points as we go forward. But I really wanted to say that this is ours to build, and it's also ours to lose onto a shelf. So, and I am very sensitive to things being lost on the shelf. Any other? I think there is a suggested motion. I think the plan is beautiful. It's aggressive. It's generational. Maybe 2 generational. 2 generations of generational. But there is a suggested motion if we want to adopt this thing.
I move to approve the Heights Streetscape Preferred Design and Implementation Plan as presented.
A second.
All right, we have a first by Grant and a second from Gladys. Is there any other discussion or comments we want to add?
Mr. Chair, I think you had a hand up on the online.
Ben, go ahead.
Or no,
Oh, Tim, sorry.
That's okay. Just like final thoughts from Nathan and Dustin on what you heard from us tonight.
Well, go ahead.
Did you hear me?
Oh, any final thoughts regarding what we took as council directive?
Yeah, that's correct.
Excuse me, board directive. Continue, figure out funding, be mindful of our opportunities to fund. I think there is the idea of the call out regarding these are not for construction drawings, but conceptual only in nature. Continue on.
Is there
And it's
anything
ours
you
to,
guys
it's ours to
guys
put on the shelf.
disagree with?
I guess that's the other. Oh,
Is there
Tim,
anything
can you repeat?
Is there anything you guys disagreed with?
No, I don't think so. I think there, the discussion about how to balance the early wins and kind of leveraging the funding is a really important conversation. I think, I look at when we started, or I know when the city started this process to look at the heights, the time that's passed, and kind of, I think Councilor Cunahan, you kind of mentioned safety and sort of how do you get something out there on the streets to support people now, recognizing that there are some really big projects ahead of us. So I think that's something that's, we've tried to very consciously build into, knowing that was a priority.
yeah, and I don't consider that a disagreement. I think that's the tension of immediate wins and, investment in leveraging local monies now, in hand in the debt that we have available. So I think that's going to take that's not a science. That's a little bit of policy, and we have you all to rely on for that and how we balance that. But I think that's a healthy tension. And again, this is how I think the plan is built for us to be responsive. If we see those opportunities, I hope we have absolutely built in the amount of, the plan can be as nimble as it needs to be responsive to both those.
I appreciate your thoughtful attention to detail. Thank you.
Cool. Well, we have a motion and a second. All in favor of accepting the plan?
Aye.
Aye.
Any against? Hearing none, I vote aye as well. Motion passes. Nathan, again, thanks so much for putting this together, and we look forward to the final report and waving it as a big giant flag for the community. So that's good.
Great. Well, thank you. And I want to point out my colleague Roxanne, who's on the call and listening, and she's been a big part of pulling this document together to make it look as nice as it does. So it's the team effort on our end.
Awesome. All right. Next item on the agenda is 6-month work plan. Will.
Yeah, thank you, President Zan Miller. I'll try to be quick on this. This is not an item for board action. It's more of looking for head nods or just any objections. The 2-year project list for the Urban Renewal Administrator was lengthy, and so I wanted to cut that down into a shorter 6-month kind of sprint and telegraph that out to make sure everyone was on board with what they expect to be doing and seeing over the next 6 months. So this came from one-on-one meetings with the URA board members over the last several weeks, and was also discussed with the Urban Renewal Advisory Committee on October 19th. And so the 6-month work plan organized by district. We're going to continue to work on parking studying strategies identified in the 2019 parking study. We've made significant progress on that, but there's still some outlying tasks left to do. We'll continue to monitor and fund existing projects that have already been approved, such as the signalization of 2nd and Oak and the stormwater enhancement project in the downtown area. So monitor and fund that. And then also I heard a lot of hunger for a district closeout resolution that we would then probably put out into March or April. We'd have a deliberate discussion where we look at all resources left in the Columbia Cascade District against all the different funding priorities, and kind of in one coordinated way have a resolution memorializing where we think the last resources should go. In the waterfront, we'll primarily be continuing to monitor and fund the stormwater line project. Resolution 2020-04 dedicated all remaining maximum indebtedness in the waterfront district for the stormwater line project. And I believe there's an item on the stormwater line later in your council meeting. Moving over to the Heights, we've just approved the Heights streetscape plan. So the next steps will be to incorporate it into the city's transportation system plan and also to formally include it in the Heights urban renewal plan as a minor amendment. So I expect to bring that back to you at your next meeting in December. This is now kind of the starting gun to engage with ODOT on jurisdictional transfer, figure out all those questions about who is doing what, maintenance wise, what does it cost, what's in this surface transportation improvement program already planned for the district. Kind of answer all of those questions that will give us the ability to engage intelligently in a jurisdictional transfer negotiation. And I expect that will last throughout the rest of the year. And then hopefully implement streetscape projects as soon as we can, as soon as it's reasonable and feasible and responsible. Moving to the West Side District, the existing contract with Elaine Howard and Echo Northwest includes the development of a 5-year action plan. So we're going to use this time ahead of the first tax increment being generated to think about that plan, kind of similar to me creating the 6-month work plan, pulling that 20 plus, nearly 30 years probably of life of this district and thinking about what is really feasible to fund first and do in the next 5 years. So components of that I'm expecting to do is a constructability analysis of the West Side to give us better data as to what public investments would really generate the most opportunity for tax increment growth. Look into a development incentive program to address infrastructure barriers for that are causing barriers to middle income levels of housing, like the 80 to 120% that isn't addressed with capital A affordable housing initiatives, like we're doing on 780 Rand Road. Identify key district performance and equity metrics to ensure that while we're improving the district, we're also making sure that we retain, make sure we have the ability to retain the people who are there already. And a key project that I heard everyone wants at the front of the list is figuring out how to do a roundabout in Mount Adams and Cascade. So really thinking through what would be the financial metrics that would allow us to move forward on that sooner rather than later. And then getting kind of doing a Heights streetscape light, but on the Cascade Avenue. So starting that as soon as there's bandwidth within the city planning department and helping to fund that effort. So those are the components that are expecting in a 5-year action plan. And then moving on to just general agency administration, expect the agency board and bylaws was last reevaluated and set in 2012, right after the Heights district was created. So now the development of this new West Side district gives us a natural point to stop, take a breath, look at our governance structure, bylaws, operating agreement with the city, make sure it's still meeting our needs. And so I expect to start that discussion at the next December meeting as well. And also on my list interested in is looking at if we can bring on additional resources in the form of summer internships that are partly grant paid to help bring on some additional bandwidth to urban renewal efforts. So that's the draft 6-month work plan as I've talked to folks. Always subject to change. You know, a development proposal coming in tomorrow will have to be nimble and be ready to react to those ad hoc challenges that come our way. But hopefully this will give us a little bit of stability and direction as we start out. So happy to answer any questions or just generally take head nods or objections.
Let's do a quick round the horn. Ben, starting with you, just your general opinion and any questions you have.
Sorry, I don't know if you can hear me. I don't have any questions, but sounds good to me.
Okay, sounds good. Tim?
Thanks, Bill. Great idea to lay all this stuff out. And I appreciate your organization.
Yeah. Right.
I love it. It's color coordinated and the timeline. It's so organized. Yes.
Well done, Will. Thank you.
One question for the continued implementation of parking study strategies. Does that include the study of a parking structure, or is that a separate?
It includes anything that we're gonna need, any sort, like we may do more parking counts, I'm not sure yet, but thinking through all the data that we're gonna need to gather and making sure we have that ready. And then I expect the actual study of the parking garage to be in year number 2.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure I knew that one way or the other. Then yeah, I also like it. It is great. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll just echo what everybody said. Thank you for honing in on this and seems like good things ahead. Thank you.
All right, clearly put together and the colors.
Right, thank you.
Thank you, Will. I think that was it. Items from agency members. I'll let anyone jump in if they have anything. Hearing none, we will. Oh, go ahead, Tim.
Nothing for me, Mark. I'm sorry.
Okay. Was that the hand?
That was the hand.
Okay. All right. The Urban Renewal Agency meeting is adjourned.
Great. I'll reconvene city council at 7:20. We made it as far as the consent agenda before you guys appropriately reminded me I had forgotten a thing. So we are now back to the consent agenda. I would entertain a motion.
I actually have a question on one.
Great.
And then I happily will. Oh gosh, who's this?
Thanks for coming, you guys.
I'm gonna go to Abigail because I'm not sure who's online, but for the waterfront stormline relocation phase 2, fiscal impact, I just couldn't tell. Is the 3 million, was that just for this phase? Is that multiple phases? Is phase 2 over or under projected budget?
I think Haley is online and I wonder if she can come on and talk a minute about the budget for this.
Hello, I am online. Can you guys all hear me?
Yes. Yes, thanks, Haley.
Hello. So the 3 million is what we have budgeted for this year, and it's a whole lot of the different phases. So it's phase 2 construction, the end of phase 3 design, and potentially the start of phase 3 construction. So this is just a portion of what we expect for the fiscal year to be equal to around 3 million.
Okay, so did we have an expected budget for just phase 2? Like, I guess, fiscal impact in these council reports for me is helpful to be, is it over, under budget? Are we on track, or are we gonna run out of money by the end? Do we know that, or can we find that out? It doesn't have to be.
So I would say under, luckily, and usually I don't, so that's pretty exciting. So in general, we had a very rough estimate at around 2 million for this phase. So it's about 800,000 less than that. But that is based off of last January estimates. So they are a little bit outdated, but I still think that our overall project is coming in lower and lower than expected. And part of that is due to the design changes that we are going through and going over. So I would expect everything to come in hopefully under the budget that we have of that 9 million, which is what we have the funding for in terms of the grants and loans from DEQ, Business Oregon, and the funding from the urban renewal districts.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
And then I will move to approve the consent agenda.
Everybody's honored.
Second.
Seconded by Colton. Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Over the motion passes. Great. Action items, Don Janetti.
All right, so in front of you in the packet is the first quarter financial report. Several weeks ago, we reviewed the fiscal 2022-23 report. This is the same format. We've moved over to this current fiscal year, and this is the first 3 months of the fiscal year through September 30th, 2023. Starting with revenue, with 25% of the fiscal year complete, Q1 fiscal year 24 general revenue was about 1.8 million. which is 17% of the annual budgeted revenues of 10.3 million. Excluding the federal COVID-19 relief funds that were received last year, Q1 revenues were 11% greater than for the same period 1 year earlier. We've also included in here year-end estimates. The year-end estimates that are on this sheet are founded on historical trends. So based on Q1 receipts, some of the larger variances, at least that we're projecting through the end of the fiscal year, starting with transient lodging taxes. Transient lodging taxes are trending approximately 10% below the budget. However, they are on par with year-to-date fiscal year 2023. So the question will be whether we'll see any change of that in the coming quarters. Local marijuana taxes are down 38.5% below budget. Parking meter receipts are just below 8%. Again, these are Q1 returns, and so we'll see and keep an eye on these trends to see if Q2 changes them, or if these are the trends that we're looking at or expect throughout the fiscal year. One of the larger variances you'll notice is in intergovernmental revenues. That is where the Oregon Fire Service Capacity Grant was projected for $384,000. Obviously, that was received last fiscal year, so that would be a permanent variance. Other changes are below budget expectations for engineering and other services. Those are generally revenues that are driven related to planning and development projects. So they're not ratable, and that'll be dependent on what type of activity we see later in the fiscal year. On utilities and other major revenues, we are seeing revenue receipts that are within 1 to 1.5% of budgeted expectations. So on the utility side, in general, other major revenues, we're not seeing any significant variances from budget. General fund expenditures are all at or within budget expectations throughout the first quarter. As we discussed last time, the general fund entered a fiscal year 2024 with a beginning fund balance in excess of $5 million. Through the Q1 projections, we are projecting a sort of balanced budget, a little over very, very small surplus of about $26,850. So far we look like the general fund is running a generally balanced revenues to expenditures. Again, we'll see if these trends continue through Q2. I will say that the only major expenditures that are sort of front loaded so far has been insurance. So all the insurance expense for the year has been received in Q1. There's nothing really significant to discuss other than that. Like I said, we'll keep an eye on some of the major revenue categories and expenses to see if there are any changes in Q2 and what are the trends we see.
Thank you. Good question.
So yeah, the 38.5% below budget for the local marijuana taxes, it seems pretty significant to me. Wondering if there is any root cause analysis that we should be looking for related to that. Is it a local issue? Is it a state issue? So yeah, just any background information I think might be helpful for us. I'm not sure what the proper recourse for that is, or if there's a group that could speak to that. You know, certainly other variances here, like 10% below budget, for TLT, something we could speak about with Visit Hood River, et cetera. But that just struck me as, is there something going on there?
Again, because it's Q1, it may be a little early to tell. I don't know. I can't tell you if that's a timing or receipt timing issue, or if it's something more structural.
So in your opinion, maybe look at it in Q2 and see if there's a trend. Okay.
Correct.
All right. Thank you.
I mean, in that last year, we'd already received, 43,000. This year, we've received nothing through September. So some of that suggests that it's just late.
Potentially. Yeah.
Because I can't imagine we got zero, actually.
Yeah. No, I mean, again, for the quarter, right, there was nothing received. I won't know until a couple of months, or at least when we close this month, if there's a catch up.
Yeah.
Others?
And for TRT, is there any additional information you could use or get from VHR or other industry groups that would help you forecast out any rest of the year changes? Because
Yeah,
if we carry through with a 10% drop for the rest of the year,
yeah. Well, I mean, so keep in mind, I mean, so what I have here as the forecast through year end, right?
Right.
It's sort of flat to last year, that does project right out through year end. So this is, I would not expect that this variance would increase quarter over quarter. And I'm not aware of any significant market changes, right? That were different than what we based our projections on. So again, you know, part of it may be timing, you know, part of it may be structural. Again, until we see Q2, it's from my perspective, it's a little too early to make any decisions about it.
by timing, you just mean collecting the actual receipts?
Actual physical receipts, correct?
Okay, is there anything outstanding in TRT?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
Other questions? Thank you, Chris. Good job.
Thank you.
Oh. Tim, did you have? I didn't go around the horn, I just asked and nobody said yes, so did I do something wrong? Okay. All right, back to the agenda. We now. Yeah, thank you. Curb ramps, Abigail.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I have no presentation or new information for you. I set this as an action item just to reiterate once again that this is not the MOU or an agreement on the whole project. This is specific to the 2 parcels that the city owns that would require new ramps.
At Rotary and Saruta Parks.
That's right.
So, just to start at the end, we have a motion.
Mhm.
What do we need before we make a motion, people? No report?
Nope.
Yep.
You have in the packet are the maps of the actual parcels.
Yep. Questions for Abigail? I would entertain a motion.
I move that we authorize the city manager work with ODOT to donate identified sections of Rotary and Saruta Parks to install ADA compliance curb ramps.
Question.
I'll second it.
Second by Zan Miller. That I could never. Okay.
Oh, my heart is racing.
Okay. Here we go, people. Any further discussion on this item? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Chair votes aye, motion passes. Great. Thank you.
Appreciate it. We'll keep working with ODOT on the rest of the project and bringing back an update as soon as we can.
Great. That takes us down to city manager comments. You're in the right spot, Abigail.
All right, thank you. One item is that we are hoping to have a council goal setting / deep dive into annexation in January, February. So if you've not let the city recorder know about your availability, please get back to Jen. Thinking that'll probably be a Saturday morning. So I've had a good response as I've put out a call for facilitators. I've actually am interviewing 3 different people or groups for facilitation about annexation. So hope to have that locked up pretty soon, but a date would be super helpful on that. I attended the MCAC symposium today. I saw Councilor Rivera there as well. I went to the afternoon. Kenny LaPointe will be speaking to you in December. I think one of the things I heard today I was very excited about was they are looking at putting something on their website that would be a place where you can refer people and they'll be able to access lots of different services that way. So that's certainly an issue for us in the city staff when someone comes in and they're talking about their utility bill and then they also say, I'm also in danger of losing my housing or I'm food insecure. It will be really great to have a resource like that. So I'm sure Kenny will speak about that more in December, but I was really pleased about that. And then it's just the season of symposiums because Councilor Zan Miller, Dustin, Will, and I all attended the MCED Symposium, Economic Development. Most of those presentation slides are available if you want to see them. But 2 sessions that probably are not available. One was on AI, so how that will affect us in the future was really interesting. And then there was a panel of employers, and I really appreciated their feedback on how we can be helpful. And I bet you can guess what their #1 issue was, which was housing, and then followed by childcare and transportation. So all things that we touch every day. So that was gratifying to hear that we are focusing on the right things, but also frustrating that we're not able to move the needle as much as we would. So I think those are my comments. So send it back to you, Mayor.
Any questions for Abigail on those items? Thank you. Committee reports, Tim,
Nothing for me, Mayor.
Doug,
None for me.
Nothing.
Mark.
Visit Hood River is putting on a series of equity and classes, I guess is the best word. And the next one is this week. And so I will find time to go to that. So and then they have their next board meeting is coming up, but
Thank you. Gladys.
Nothing for me.
None.
I have taken the steps to reactivate my Latino Advisory Council. Thanks to Gladys for your help with this. I pinged out to some folks and some folks were excited about being participating. And so Jackie and I are at the doodle phase. So we're working on that. Excited about that. Another committee, we have the Sister City Committee that Councilor Saunders has been gracious enough to volunteer her time to participate in. So without objection, we will agree that, because I think the rules say that we appoint, like there's a city rep. And so Megan, are you willing to be the city rep?
I am. Thanks.
Thanks for doing that. And I think I alerted you all tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock. I'm getting a fat bottle of sake, it appears. General Consul Yoshioka is coming to visit, and I'm looking forward to seeing how that all goes. So thanks to the folks who coordinated some parts of that. That's that. That takes us to mayor comments. We have some beautiful books for the beautiful baby. So welcome to the expanded family. We'd love to hear a trip report from Grant. Some of us have been on this trip, and tell us how it's going.
Her name is Piper, and hello, general public, as well for all this. General public, how much information do I want to really share? It was born on the 27th of October. It's going great. Generally sleeping fine. So
Cool.
everything going well.
Congratulations to you guys.
Thanks. And then you all can meet her at some point. Staff already did.
Oh, that's fun.
We believe she was the youngest person ever to be in council chambers at 10 days.
Something-ish.
Yeah.
Awesome.
A new record.
No. No.
That's a good thing. I brought my kids and they all have pictures up here.
Okay.
Okay, let's stop bothering this nice man.
That won't happen. That's not happening. It's never happening.
Council comments, Tim.
Nothing for me, Mayor, other than to mention that the air quality last week was perfectly horrible. In part due to prescribed burning, agricultural
Biggest
burning.
prescribed burn I've ever seen in the gorge.
Yeah, it was just terrible. And it coincided with a period of air stagnation. So at some point in time, there's got to be some type of thought to not having that happen during that type of weather.
I was in Lyle coming home from work, and I saw, it was like the kind of plume you see in August, like that, you know, like, wow, that's a real fire. Like that was a giant fire that we self-inflicted.
It was just perfectly horrible, you know, and it really isn't terribly unhealthy. So
Thanks for highlighting that, Tim. Doug.
Really nothing for me this week.
Megan.
Thank you.
I attended the Civics Academy last week that planning was talking that, and I know we talked about it earlier, but I did just want to thank Jackie and I think all city staff for what sounded like a really positive program. So.
Mark.
Yeah, you know, I want to second the kudos for doing the academy thing. I think that kind of direct communication and stuff is golden, and I hope we can continue it and learn little bits and make it better next time. So that's good. Abigail said we went to the MCED symposium. I really find that there's interest, and so if y'all can find time to do it in future years, there's networking with all our peers throughout the gorge. There's an entertaining economist presentation, and and they generally do a good job. And then lastly, it's come up in a couple of discussions later, and I just want to bring this up that I don't know where it fits into our work plan, but we currently have a single residence or business address on Wine Country Avenue Boulevard or whatever. And I absolutely, and they're going to change. I hate the name of that street. And I did from the day that it got presented to us on council, and 7 of us were going, oh, really? That's the name we're going to use? And so I'm going to look for and be annoying to see if we can't find the opportunity to change the name of that street.
You should have said no then.
I was just a little teeny new Mark. And I said, what? So, so more on that later, but just to be not surprised when I rant about it later. So,
thank you. Gladys?
No, well, thank you, staff, for the Civics 101 course that took place. It's incredible to see our community members having a better understanding of what we do, and hopefully that leads to others to become excited about the opportunity that the city is willing to teach, educate, and empower, so that we have more of our community members within council, within advisory committees and whatnot. So I do appreciate those efforts. I recognize that most of you stayed late Tuesday afternoons in order to do so. I appreciate your time. Speaking of students that were back here today, I had an opportunity to go and talk to 66 second graders that were really excited and very aware of what the role that government plays, especially here. And so that was exciting to see. It was an incredible moment when one of the little kids asked me in Spanish, do you speak Spanish? And I said, yes, I'm Mexican. And when I said that, I mean, the excitement on their little faces, like that was an incredible moment, just to like, yeah. So that was pretty cool.
Gladys, what program or where was this?
It was at Mid Valley,
Okay.
Mid Valley Elementary.
Oh, nice.
Little second graders. And a big shout out to Jackie for getting 66 stickers. They were all really grateful, and I feel like they were just excited to continue learning. So grateful for that opportunity.
Thanks for being there. That's awesome. Grant?
First of all, thanks for the surprise gifts for later. We'll teach her how to read next week, so hopefully she can come recite these at some point soon. Something I generally noticed before, but more acutely now, is shoving a stroller around town. Often walking the street, which is fine, whatever, I'm fine with it. But a lot of the existing streets, sidewalks, what have you, don't have any curb cuts or ramps or anything like that. And this is not just one isolated area, it's throughout town. And there are a number of houses that don't have sidewalks in front of them in the first place. We've discussed this in a number of forms of fashions, mostly building code related and whatnot, transportation related. One thought I've had is how to address those long term. I don't know exactly how to do that, but I would imagine that we can find a way to get that done and create an actual network of sidewalks throughout town, as well as the same time lifting that burden off of people who want to develop, be it a larger development or a business in their garage. So if somebody comes into City Hall and just wants a simple permit, they're not stuck. And make a more livable community for everybody, not just the bipeds.
Thank you. All right, that takes us to our executive session. We've got a couple things to discuss. We're going to take a break first, and then we're going to go into our executive session. Okay? I'm gonna start.
Still got live.
I'm going to read the script. Thank you. The city council will now meet in executive session pursuant to ORS 192.661H to consult with counsel concerning the legal rights and duties of a public body with regard to current litigation or litigation likely to be filed, and 1I, to review and evaluate pursuant to standards, criteria, and policy directives adopted by the governing body, the employment-related performance of the chief executive officer. Representatives of the news media are not here. Representative of the news media are not here. No decision may be made nor final action taken in executive session. The executive session is anticipated to last 35 minutes. At the end of the session, the city council meeting will